this is Catherine O'Connell and welcome to Lawyer on Air. If you are looking for inspirational stories about women in law, then this is the podcast for you. Join me and my lawyer ladies as we enjoy a glass of wine after a hard day at work and talk about the world of women in law. I hope you will enjoy getting to know these amazing women who I am so proud to share a profession with. I'm glad you're here and I hope you enjoy the show. Hi everyone and welcome to the third episode of Lawyer on Air. Today I'm joined by Aramide Fields, who is based in Tokyo and since November 2020 has been Associate General Counsel for the Asia Division of a Fortune 500 company called Autoliv. If you're a car owner or a driver, you will most certainly have one of Autoliv's products in your vehicle, protecting you as you drive. They are the world leader in automotive safety with 41% of the market share. They develop and manufacture protective systems such as airbags, seatbelts, and steering wheels. Aramide provides her legal support to the Autoliv business in Japan and Asia, and they are a super busy team with the company having operations in 27 countries. Every year, their products save more than 30,000 lives and they prevent 10 times as many injuries. Those are statistics that must make Aramide very proud of the place she works at. Aramide provides strategic legal and business legal advice to her colleagues at Autoliv, such as the sales and purchasing and supply chain teams and the compliance team. Not only in Japan, but she does this throughout Asia, including Korea, India, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. She's a savvy commercial lawyer and does all the negotiating on the agreements and deals with the many issues that come up in her business around product quality, product liability, privacy, intellectual property, and commercial disputes. Before Aramide joined Autoliv, she was in BigLaw as a senior associate in the litigation department at Morrison Foerster, or MoFo, as this firm is often affectionately referred to. She worked in the areas of commercial litigation, product liability, IP, internal investigations, and compliance. About roughly half of her time at MoFo was spent in their San Diego office, and the other half on this side of the world at the firm's Tokyo office. She represented some of the biggest well-known companies in the world, I understand. But Aramide has said openly that the most meaningful work she did was in the pro bono cases she was assigned to help out on. And we'll talk a little bit about that more shortly. Aramide also volunteers her time working alongside me at the non-profit board of Women in Law Japan. And I really enjoy her insights and contribution there. Aramide is also a mum of 3 children, including a set of twins. And although I have the mic in front of me right now today, it's Aramide you will find down at the local karaoke para, singing her heart out. And when she's not doing that, she's also into yoga and is right into the style, the Nia style, I believe, of dance and fitness, and was a former instructor of Nia. Aramide is really a lovely person, and I was so drawn to her kind and compassionate personality right from the start. She really does love helping people as the essence of her personal brand. And with that, Aramide, welcome to the show.
Hello, Catherine. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction and also for inviting me to be a guest here. I'm really honored that you asked and grateful to be a guest. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm super happy to have you here. And today we're going to be talking about your career, how and why you got involved in your work in the US and Japan, and how you're balancing your different hats that you wear, such as a mum and a lawyer, and some of the issues and challenges you're facing. And I'd so like you to have a chance to give your gems of advice for young lawyers on their career path. How does that sound?
That sounds fantastic. And I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And today we're talking online as we're still post-pandemic, or during a pandemic, I should say, still in Japan, post-state of emergency. And we're doing this chat online today. But if we were meeting up in person, where would we be? Do you have a favorite wine bar or restaurant you love to go to? And what would be your choice of the menu today?
Well, as a mom of 3, as you mentioned, I haven't been to a wine bar in Japan, and of course, because of the pandemic as well, I haven't been to a wine bar in quite some time, but one that I would love to go to and went to one time before really the pandemic kind of went out of control in Japan there's a Tsutaya Starbucks in Roppongi that has a wine bar also with dessert. And it's actually the dessert part that probably gets me most excited. And I'd probably get a red wine and maybe something kind of like a dark, rich chocolate would be my orders from the menu.
Ooh, I love that. I am with you. Let's go there as soon as we can. And
Absolutely.
I know exactly what you mean. It's only 15 or so minutes walk from me. So I would be loving to have you there and order something delicious off the menu like you've suggested. That sounds great. So I'm thinking about when we first met, and I'm pretty sure it was when you were still at MoFo, and we did a JICN, a Japan In-House Counsel Network event there, and you presented on litigation topics. I think it was with Dan Levison, and it seems like a long time ago to me, but I really think that's when I got to know you. And then through Women in Law Japan now, but you've been on Women in Law Japan board since about 2016. Do you remember when we first met? Was it back when I think it was around 2012, 13, 14?
I'm amazed that your memory is so good. It was actually 2008 or 9, I believe it was.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, so that I remember, I think Dan, maybe I presume that he worked with Angela Krantz to get that set up, and he invited me to Dan Levison, a partner at MoFo. I think maybe he was an associate at the time, but he invited me to speak on, I think the topic, at least that I talked about, was attorney-client privilege for in-house counsel. And I remember just being scared out of my mind. I'm like, what do I know to teach? I was a second or third year attorney. What am I going to teach these people who, have been practicing for decades and come sit in this room? But you know what? You just sometimes suck it up and say, all right, he's asked me to do this thing and let me just do the best I can. So yeah, that was quite some time ago. But I agree. That's really through Women in Law Japan that I've come to know you better and been able to admire all that you've done in the community. So it's been a real pleasure.
Well, it sounds like you've got the better memory than me, remembering it was 2008. I think that's so fantastic. That means we've had more than 10 years of knowing each other. And I had no idea that it was your first or very first or near to first presentation at that time. You were so confident. And if you were nervous, it never showed at the time. I do remember now it was attorney-client privilege. You're right. Absolutely right. I've mentioned a little bit about your career, or your current role, I should say, at Autoliv briefly. How do people recognize Autoliv? Do they know the company name? How do you introduce yourself when you're talking to others? Is it different perhaps when you speak to lawyers or when you're speaking to other people in the community?
I think probably people don't know Autoliv unless they are in the automotive industry. So usually, well, for one thing, because of the pandemic, there haven't been that many people that I've been able to introduce myself to and say, hey, this is where I work and this is what I do. I mean, most of the people I'm encountering, I know them already, and they know that I was at MoFo and they know where I am now. So I think most people probably would not necessarily know the company. I think when I was at MoFo, I would generally just tell people I'm a lawyer. I do litigation in Japan. And I think now I've literally only had one time when somebody asked me, oh, what do you do? And I was so new to the role. And the first thing that popped into my head was like, I work at MoFo and I'm a lawyer. And I thought, oh, wait, no, I have a new job. And so I stumbled over my words and I work in the, I'm a lawyer in the legal department. It was like, what do I do? What do I do? And I think I said something like, I'm a lawyer and I work for a car company that supplies seatbelts and airbags and other things to cars, for cars. And so yeah, I think, I pretty much would probably have the same general response, whether it's lawyer or non-lawyer. In Japan, though, I probably wouldn't get into as much specifics, especially if it's, maybe it's another like mom at my kid's school or something. I might just say, I'm a lawyer, or if trying my best at Japanese, I might say bengoshi, which usually gets bengoshi, which means lawyer in Japanese. And I'm not trying to instill that awe, but I'm just trying to convey what I do in a way that makes sense. So I guess it is very context specific.
Yeah, I mean, when I joined, I remember it was like Panasonic, and I joined Hogan Lovells. I kept saying Panasonic. And then when I joined Molex. After that, I remember saying, I'm a Hogan Love. Oh, no, I'm not. Who am I? What am I? So the same things happen. It takes a little bit of time for your mind or your brain to catch up to the change, even though you've made a physical swap in jobs. So I'm hearing you on that one. But tell me a little bit about your career, though, Aramide, because I'm really interested in what got you into the law and why you chose law and your early stages there as a lawyer. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually would say for the first 20 some years of my life, I absolutely said, I am not going to be a lawyer. It is not a profession that I want. And that comes from my dad being a lawyer. He was a criminal defense attorney in Washington, D.C. And he had basically had a career and then decided to go back to law school. He went to Georgetown, and I don't recall how old he was, maybe 40 something at the time. And he thought, well, I'm an old man and no one's going to want to teach me how to be a lawyer. So he decided to hang up a shingle and become a court-appointed attorney. So in the U.S., if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. And that's the kind of attorney that he was. And so he just worked so hard all the time. And when I saw that as a kid, I just thought, gosh, that just seems hard. And it just didn't appeal to me at all. And then I also recall a vivid memory of I have two older brothers, and all three of us at some point worked with my dad in his law office over the summer. So maybe I was, 15, 16, and it was my turn to be dad's summer intern. And I was accompanying him to a court hearing. And he was in Washington, D.C. At a time, well, I guess not at this time, but there was a time when Washington, D.C. was known as like the murder capital of the world. I mean, it was just horrible, drugs, violence, all kinds of things. And these are the people my dad was representing because he believed everyone deserves a good defense. I mean, it's a beauty of the American justice system. So anyway, we're at a hearing, and basically the summer intern job was basically take this to the mailbox, put these in a file cabinet. There's nothing complicated or sophisticated or really that much related to the law. So this day, I think I was carrying a binder of evidence for a hearing, and I didn't really know any of the substance, but the binder opened and I just happened to see a picture of, sorry, not to be too graphic, but it was basically a body that had had gunshot wounds.
Oh dear.
And it was basically like, I closed it and I was like, that's it. I'm not being a lawyer. I'm not doing this. This is not for me. I probably didn't work for much longer after that. So that was my I'm not going to be a lawyer story. So I went to a high school that was known for science and technology. And my mom was a professor of microbiology and was just, always exposed us to science. And both my parents were just lifelong learners and educators, and instilled the importance of learning and education. So getting from my mom, I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll be a scientist. So I went to the science and technology high school. When I got to college, I thought maybe I would be pre-med, maybe be a doctor. That didn't work out, just didn't really find it that interesting. And then I tried 1 year. I went to the University of Virginia, and there was a 5-year program where you could get a master's degree in teaching and also get your bachelor's degree. And I was like, great, I want to get out of school. Let me do that. And then I went to the practical in-room, you basically do like student teaching. You go and observe a classroom. And that first day I was like, I am not meant to be a teacher. There's so many kids, and it just felt like chaos. And I thought, okay, it's a noble profession, but it's not for me. And so eventually I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I have another lawyer in my family who I'm very close to. One of my aunts she was in-house at Amtrak, and she had also come to law as a second career. She was a social worker before she went to law school, and then, in-house at Amtrak. And when I told her what I thought I wanted to do, which was kind of this very generic, help people. I want to help people. How do I do that? I thought I maybe want to be a psychologist, maybe I want to be a doctor, maybe I want to be a teacher. And she said, well, as a lawyer, you do help people. You just have a certain set of tools and skills, and that's what your specialty is. And you're helping people who don't have that specialty to navigate, legal issues, whether you're, litigator or transactional. And that really spoke to me. And I suddenly saw law and being a lawyer as something other than what my dad was doing. And intellectually, I should have been probably smart enough to figure out there's another way to do this. But, it took that conversation and conversations with others to say, oh, well, yeah, okay, law is, it's a pretty good gig, and I think I was also told by many that if you have a law degree, you can do anything, which, I think I'm not sure if that's quite accurate, but there are a lot of people in a lot of professions that have law degrees, so business people and politicians. And so that is what then became my path and how I ended up going to law school and deciding to be a lawyer.
Wow, what a story. That's amazing. Did your two brothers become lawyers, by the way?
They did, yes. So we're all three of us lawyers.
Wow. Are they in a different area of law to you?
So I have one brother is practicing in Paris. He's at Orrick, and the other does mainly sort of like contract law work, and he's based in Washington, D.C. as well. So we all have, sort of different areas.
Right.
And I think came to it in our own way, in our own time. And my oldest brother, for example, I think he went back to law school after being out of college for maybe 5-6 years or something like that. I don't remember exactly. So yeah, so we all kind of found our way to it, and I think are reasonably happy and that we made that decision.
Is your dad still practicing?
No, he passed in 2018.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, but I think he would be extremely proud. And I think you've made a really good point, is that law that we see on TV or that we see sometimes in our minds, or what we think are lawyers are the criminal kind of lawyers, the people who are doing the defending of the bad boys in court and the bad girls too, right? But so there are different ways to be a lawyer. And I think it's amazing that you had your aunt to guide you in that way. And I know now I'm thinking, as I looked at your LinkedIn profile, because I really think the listeners should take a look at your profile, because there's some really great hints there to talk about how to show your credibility as a lawyer, but also write like a human being. And I think that's probably where you wrote, and I've got it here in front of me, why did I become a lawyer? To help people, simple but true. Before law school, that singular focus led me to consider being a doctor, a teacher, or a psychologist, but none of those stuck. Pivotal conversations with several mentors convinced me that law school was the path for me. So I'm hearing now that your aunt was most definitely one of your mentors. Right?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And I'm very fortunate to have grown up in a tight-knit family. It was all mainly on my mom's side of the family in the Washington, D.C. area. So that aunt and another aunt and my grandmother and we were the Sunday dinner, go to church on Sunday, go to grandma's house and have the big Sunday dinner as a family, throughout my childhood up until going away to college. And I'm very grateful for that. And so this aunt who, it's almost sort of hadn't really talked about what I was going to be or what I was going to do until it was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to graduate from college. And what do I do now? I realized, well, okay, let me start talking to people. Let me start seeing, what possibilities have I not considered, and then raise that with her. And yes, so she's very, very instrumental in that decision.
So it came from you to reach out and ask people, because that's something that never occurred to me when I was younger, that I could ask people to help me with what I wanted to be. I went to certain schools to find out about, Japanese, for example, as my first career in learning Japanese and becoming a tour guide. But I never thought about asking people to actually give me advice. But it sounds like one of the really important career decisions you made was to actually go to people and ask them to be your mentor, and they were naturally within your family. Did you also go outside of your family, or did you find any, aside from your father and brother, but were there other males in your community who helped you as well? Was it basically these lovely females that you had in your community that helped you?
I think at that time it was probably more based on my family, and just because the women, there are more women and more dominant women, I guess, in my family. That's kind of naturally where that was. But absolutely. Throughout my career, absolutely, there have been males who have been instrumental as mentors and people who I've asked, for advice at sort of every pivotal decision, every choice of, should I go to Japan? Should I take this in-house role? I'm very much let me just see what other people think about this, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I am looking for, tell me the answer, what do I do? But I like to gather information. What do I not know about what this might look like? Someone who has been, has 20, 30 years of experience as a lawyer, what might they think about the decision to move to a different country and practice law in Japan as opposed as being a U.S. admitted lawyer? So that was just something that I naturally did it was really more about, I guess, curiosity and wanting to kind of collect data. How do I make the best decision for myself? And I think the way for me to do that is to see, well, what can I learn from other people about this decision?
Did you know that your aunt and your other aunt and people there were your mentors at that time? Or do you now know that because mentoring is a thing and we all know this now, but did you know it at the time?
No, I didn't. They were just conversations and discussions, and I was making decisions based on them. But I think looking back in my life, there are people who I now would say, well, yeah, of course that was a mentor. Of course that was someone Dan Levison, for example,
Yes.
is someone.
Yes.
So when I first came to Japan, I was here for, about a 2-year stint. And I would say about 75% of my time was working with him. And I learned so much from how he connects with people, and and every now and then it would be like Aramide, you probably should do this. So for example, if I were to travel to different offices, he was very, he would encourage me, go meet people, go use that opportunity. If you're going to be in the Hong Kong office because you're there for an investigation, you should meet some of the Hong Kong partners. Go talk to people, let them know who you are, ask them what they're doing. And it was that sort of picking that up as a second, third year attorney that helped me throughout my entire career, because, so much of that sort of informal networking, connecting with people, people knowing your name, people knowing your face can just help you in ways that you can't imagine. And it's not all selfish. Some of it is, there are really interesting people out there in the world. And so just the opportunity to learn about what people are doing and just little things like that. Dan is just one of many that along the way, when I look back, I'm like, yeah, that's a mentor. That's what mentoring is. That's what it looks like for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Dan, for example, when I started my law practice, he was one of the first people to reach out to me and make introductions. Dan is an amazing guy. And I think it's men like him who are really important for women as well as they grow in the law. And I think back to a Japanese male that I knew back in New Zealand who was instrumental in moving me from tour guiding into the law practice. And I had never thought about it until, much later I realized he was also a mentor. So I think it's important. You and I probably agree that it's important to go out and find a mentor, to ask, as you gave your example there with the Hong Kong office, to actually, what's stopping you from asking a partner a little bit of information? They would love to sit down with you and give you some advice or some guidance. So I think you're saying what I would say is just to speak up and actually just be confident and ask people to help you. Would you say that as your sort of advice or recommendations for listeners who are seeking out mentors?
Well, I actually don't know that I've ever specifically asked to be mentored. I don't think I've ever said, well, let me think about that. That's true. I've never asked to be mentored. I will maybe call someone up and say, I'm thinking about doing this thing, and you're someone whose opinion I trust. And, what insights do you have to share about it? What do you think about this? I think, I've heard of people who have been very direct. You go to LinkedIn, you look at their profile, you say, I want you to mentor me, and reach out. I've never done that. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. But for me, the way that I have, I think, developed and found mentors is basically through, just very organically through work. The people that in my career at MoFo in particular, the people who I count as mentors are people who maybe just by chance I ended up working on something with them, a partner in a group that I've not worked with. And you do the work together, but through the work, because just the way the law firms are, you spend sometimes a lot of time with the one partner or other associate or, your team of people. And just over time, just sort of these natural connections form. And, maybe you started out talking about the work, what the work is. And then later on, you're talking about family and life and, values and what's important and, and things like that. And so I think those are the people that I end up then going back to, because I feel like we have made some connection on a personal level. And I, sort of feel like I, there's something about them that maybe I admire or, that I trust them. And I think that they'll give me good advice. And so those are the people that then I ask my questions of. But it's not like necessarily I need help and I need you to mentor me and, please ask me this question. So for me, it's all very organic.
Yes, I hear you. So, and sometimes if you ask, please mentor me, it puts a whole burden or an obligation on the person who hears that. Mm-hmm. But if you frame it in the way that you're saying, as a way of saying, can you help me answer this question, or can you guide me through this piece here? That's a little different, and it's easier for the person who's the recipient of that request, I feel, if they are just being asked to guide or to give information rather than mentor. So I think there's a real big difference there. And you've pulled out a point I think is really important in the way when you ask for something, maybe not label it as mentoring, but call it as a little bit of advice or guidance or help or assistance. I think that can make things a lot easier.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I can't say that there was necessarily rhyme or reason. I didn't say, okay, well, I can't call this mentoring. I guess I just didn't think of it in that way. It was more about curiosity, and I am trying to get to an answer for myself. So let me go and find people who might help me get to that answer for myself.
Right. Okay. Well, I know you loved your work at MoFo, and especially the pro bono cases that I talked about at the top. And I wondered about how people get to do pro bono cases. And was that a way of you also perhaps putting your hand up, or are you assigned to do those cases? How did that happen, and what kind of joy did you derive from working on those cases?
So at MoFo, pro bono is just one of the core sort of values, and really one of the reasons why I chose MoFo out of law school. I went to school at Stanford, and so in the Bay Area, and MoFo is a California Bay Area based law firm, global of course, but that's kind of one of the primary offices for MoFo. And so I just happened to meet a lot of attorneys who would come, for example, talk to the Black Law Students Association, and the core values of the firm of pro bono and diversity and it seemed more down to earth, I guess, and like natural people. I mean, calling themselves MoFo, for example, which, I had to explain to my mother one time why that was something that was a little unusual. Pro bono is something that's really important to the firm, and it's fairly easy, really. I mean, there are pro bono coordinators, and you can reach out and say, hey, I'd like to do some pro bono work, and they can assign something to you, or you can be very proactive and go out and say, you'd find something in the community that appeals to you. And if it sort of meets the public interest needs, you can bring that to the firm and say, this is something that I would like to do. And I think I did over my career, I probably did a mix of taking, maybe some being on a pro bono listserv, and somebody says, hey, would you like to take this case? Other times I was very proactive about saying, I want to take on an asylum case, and having that be the thing that I devoted my pro bono time to. And I think that I definitely had the, wanting to help people. And so being able to give back in that way was very important to me. But I also learned from some of the top litigators and, top attorneys at the firm, the importance of having sort of your own thing, and how much you learn and grow from having your own case, which as my first asylum case, maybe I was like first or like a second year. And I thought, oh my goodness, they're going to let me stand up in court and represent, this person seeking asylum in the U.S. And, but yes, because otherwise he would be doing it himself. And the chances of getting asylum just increase exponentially when people have a lawyer. And I thought, okay, well, maybe it doesn't matter if you're a seasoned attorney or if you're like myself, was at the time, a first or second year, let me just do the best that I can. And I took that case, and it lasts, I don't know, maybe it was about a year, and I was able to get asylum for my client. And it was, it's fantastic when someone puts their trust in you and then says, thank you, like you have changed my life. I didn't often get that sort of groundbreaking, compelling wins, I guess, in litigation for business clients. But there was like that human element that was always really important to me, that I was able to hold on to through the pro bono cases.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. I think a lot of lawyers probably avoid such kinds of cases. And there you were going head in to that kind of case, and you had success, and someone, just one person, you changed their whole life. I'm not sure what that person would be doing if you hadn't helped them, or what they are doing now because you have. But as you just said, owning something, right? That's your significant part of your career. If you probably did nothing else, you would be proud of the fact that you had done that case and helped somebody. And I guess that the firm also give you credit for that, right? You're not running around doing pro bono and not feeling bad that you're not billing on other cases. Is that right? The firm look after you? And is that success that you had with that case, is that especially celebrated in the firm as well?
It is, yeah. I mean, so to the getting credit, yes. I mean, there's of course, and in BigLaw, the billable hour requirement, which is fairly substantial, but for at least at MoFo, the hours that you spend on pro bono are unlimited towards that billable hour requirement. Some firms, I think, might cap it at 25 hours per year or 50 hours per year. And I think I don't know. I think I got a report when I left MoFo of how many hours over my career I'd spent. It was a lot. It was a lot. And fortunately I never felt like anyone was saying you can't do this or this is too much. You got to focus on the billable clients. Of course, it's a firm and it's a profit-driven entity. And so, you wouldn't want to show up and only do pro bono works. People might think, well, okay, well, then, unless you are designated in that role.
Right. Yes.
But yeah, so there's credit and there's also celebration of it. I mean, I got a pretty significant pro bono victory in Japan, and then it was like, okay, well, can we put this on newsletters and like celebrate this and share that we're doing this work. And so yeah, there's definitely it's definitely in the DNA of MoFo to be working on pro bono cases. And again, it's one of the reasons why I chose the firm. I'm glad that I did so.
Fabulous. You just mentioned one in Japan. I've got to ask you what that was.
So that was winning asylum for a refugee in Japan, which, I mean, I don't know if you know the numbers for asylees in
Tell
Japan.
me.
I mean, I don't know the current number of those who are granted, but it's something like 0.1% of those who apply who are actually granted asylum in Japan. And I mean, it was that was another, life-changing. I mean, my client who just had a harrowing story of, where she was from and how she got here, and how she was able to stay. And actually, she was basically told, I think maybe 19, 20 years, fairly young, was sort of told by everyone, like, you can't get asylum in Japan. That doesn't happen. But she believed, and because she believed, we tried, and it worked. And so, I'll never forget the day that, again, she looked at me and said, like, you've changed, thank you, God, thank you, MoFo, thank you, everyone. She's breaking down in tears. Of course, then I'm in tears, and it's just really amazing to know, again, like the impact that you can have as a lawyer to help people, just based on the tools and knowledge that you have that somebody else doesn't have. So it's been really, really wonderful part of my career.
Well, you certainly almost have me in tears. My body is literally tingling as you're telling me these stories. I am so amazed at what you've done. And I really think you're an inspiration for others who may think they can't change the world or they can't change anybody's life. And in fact, you actually can. And you've already, that I know of, changed two people's lives that you've told me about, and made all the difference for them. And I congratulate you on that. And I know you won't take that congratulations, but I think that's absolutely amazing. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that.
Okay, well, MoFo kept you here for a while in Japan, and you've raised a family here as well. And I'm really interested to know how you you decided to do that, because out of all places, Japan may not be the easiest place with language and other things happening there. How did you decide to do that, and how have you been managing your family life as well as running your work life here in Japan?
Yeah, so the decision to raise a family here, as many things in my life, there were some good things that were planned and some other things that are a little bit happenstance, and then I just kind of run with it. So the raising a family here, I think as you know, so I've had a couple of back and forth from Japan, San Diego. I was here 2008, 2009, 10-ish, as we discussed before, and then went back to San Diego. And that first time I came, it was for 2 years. And there's a joke in MoFo Tokyo office that once you arrive from any office, because a lot of people sort of rotate through, that you have to sort of surrender your passport because you're not leaving. Like once
Right.
you're in.
Right.
And so these jokes. So the first time I came, it was actually a 3-month stint, and then the litigation group asked me to return for a 2-year stay. And I basically deferred the decision for a couple of months. I don't know. Again, my polling everyone. What do you think? Is this a good idea? Should I do this? And then decided to do it. But when I left, I tried to be as clear as I could that there was a spot for me back in San Diego at the end of those 2 years. I really wanted it to be clear. I am not necessarily a lifelong Japan person. This is just a nice little stint, something interesting to change things up. And everyone said, yes, that's right. That's fine. Okay, 2 years. And so I spent 2 years here. It was fantastic, but went back to San Diego and thought that was it. Okay, back to San Diego.
Right.
And then, as life happens, I started to actually a lull in work happened in around, I don't know, maybe in like, I guess the year was 2013, 14. So I've been practicing quite some time then. And again, having made my connections with people in different places, I think probably Dan Levison, like he's coming up again, was one of the first people I reached out to. And I said, hey, do you have any work? Is there anything, going on? And he said, I think, we've got this investigation maybe you can help with. And I love internal investigations. And so there I was sitting in San Diego helping with this huge investigation that was happening in Japan. And the lead partner on that was Jim Huff, who's someone who I had heard wonderful things about, but had never met, and then got to work with him through this. And I sort of stumbled my way into returning to Japan through this opportunity. And basically there was someone who was leaving the firm, and there was, I could sort of feel that there was a void. Tell you this honestly, when I asked, would you like me to come for a little bit just to help get over the hump in this investigation, to kind of like get us through to the finish line? And Jim said, that's a little bit maybe tough just to come for this project, but have you considered coming back permanently to Japan, or longer term to Japan? And I really hadn't. And I mean, I really thought my 2 years, that was it. And I'm kind of moving on, and I'm back to practicing in the US. And that's what started my discussions of the return to Tokyo, rather. And again, oh gosh, do I do it again? Is this right? I'm at this time, almost a 10th year associate, the partnership discussions. If it hasn't happened now, is it going to happen? Is Japan going to help partnership? All that stuff.
All those things, yes.
All those things. And meanwhile, my husband and I had also started about maybe starting to plan a family. And we basically said, well, let's hold off on the family decision until we figure out what the Japan thing is. And we then decided, okay, let's do it. Let's go back to Japan. Let's do it again. And then I found out I was pregnant. And so then it became, okay, do we still go to Japan? Is this part of the master plan that, maybe I'd not really figured out. But anyway, I guess long story short, I decided to move here after giving birth to my first child.
Right.
So when my daughter was 6 months old, we got on a plane in San Diego and flew to Tokyo and started our little family of 3 life here in Tokyo.
My goodness.
And, yeah.
Wow. And I love that it sort of meandered a little bit there like a river, but you got there. And again, that man, Dan, he's going to have to be interviewed by me, I feel, because he's obviously a very significant person. He's taking you under his wing, but also your other friend there that you mentioned, Jim. So I love that you've also had these men in your life at the firm looking out for you during that time. And so you've stayed here, and the other two that you have are twins, right?
Yes, yeah. So one of the interesting things about the decision to have kids, start a family, all of that. My husband, so he always felt like if he was going to have kids, he wanted to raise them abroad, so somewhere outside of the U.S.
You got that.
You got that, right? Yeah. And actually, so part of the Japan story that kind of how I ended up here in the first place. I tell him all the time, he has very strong like manifesting skills. Okay, he once came to Japan when he had a girlfriend who was on the JET program, and I think maybe he was in college or something, and so it was always, and he loved it. He loved Japan, thought it was like wonderful, best place in the world, and he'd always wanted to return. And when I was first offered the opportunity to come for that 3-month stint, I actually said no at first because, when I was, just I think I was a second-year attorney, and I really been wanting to do patent litigation work, and I just hadn't been able to get it. And then I finally got on a big case with one of the top partners of the firm, and I'm like, this is it. And then somebody says, well, do you want to come to Japan? I thought, but but I just got on this case, and if I leave, they're going to like fill my spot, and I can't do it. And so on the spot, when somebody asked, I was like, oh, thank you for the opportunity, but I don't think so. And then I went home and I told my husband. He was like, what are you doing? Someone offered you a 3-month stint in Japan, all expenses paid, going to pay for your flight, pay for your housing, and you get to live in Tokyo. And I was like, oh, well, okay, maybe I should say yes. Maybe I should do that. So that was the first. And then the manifesting, the raising kids abroad. Yeah, I mean, it's been phenomenal, brilliant, better than I could have imagined. So I now have the 3 kids, as you mentioned. So the first, who was born in California, then we came here.
Right.
And then I've got she's 6 years old. She's at a Japanese public school and is fully bilingual in Japanese English. I tell people all the time, if I could even have half of her Japanese language skills, I would be set. I would be able to function at the grocery store fully in Japanese. But she's amazing. And so the twins, that was okay. I think we're ready to have baby number 2, and okay, let's try. And then
2 and 3.
2 became 2 and 3. Yeah. So that was a surprise. As I'm sure, for many people having twins, is I literally thought I was on candid camera when the doctor said, oh, there's my OBGYN says, oh, there's 1 egg. Oh, there, or 1 sac rather. There's 2. And I'm like, two what? I'm sorry. Come again?
Yes.
Quite surprising. So anyway, now that we have seen what the language and culture and exposure has had for my oldest, we just are wanting to repeat that for my twins, because it's really just phenomenal to see a child developing in this way, and the ability to cross culture and language, and just it's been, as I said, it's been really, really amazing to witness, and to
perfect.
Be able to
it sets your children up very well, I think, for their future. And if only all children could grow up knowing 2 or 3 cultures, I think the world would be a much better place in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I have to carry on and think about other things that I want to ask you. There's so much, because you're full of so much wonderful information. But one thing that struck me is that you made a pivot, if we use that word that's very common to use these days, over the last 12 months, especially pivoting from that BigLaw role, right, where you were managing your family. You took on a new role. You moved from MoFo to Autoliv in November of last year. And if anyone's forgotten, it was actually the middle of a pandemic. And I've no idea how you were able to do that courageously, move from job to job. And I really wanted to go back and just talk to you about that, your journey and how you moved roles. What led you to break away from MoFo? They were looking after you there well. I know you loved the work. Was it something else there that you thought, I want to try something new? I don't want to put words in your mouth, so please tell me what led you to break away and go in-house?
Yeah, so it was, I guess, a combination of things, as many life decisions are. But I'd say the driving factor is, MoFo. There, as I mentioned, there are a lot of attorneys who sort of rotate through, and because of just sort of tax implications that hit after someone's been in Japan, after at least a U.S. citizen's been in Japan for 5 years, that's often when, if there hasn't been an end to a stint before then, that's often when it will happen. And so I was having these conversations with MoFo about, this 5-year mark that's happening, and we probably should think about, you returning to San Diego, or do you think you want to go to DC, or what office would you want to go to? But Tokyo long term is probably not a viable option. And so it was in those discussions realizing, well, I've got the MoFo's been great, and I can continue on in the US. But again, that family experience that I'm having here, my husband loving Japan, my kids just being able to offer this experience for them, we just weren't ready. We weren't ready to give it up. And so one of my mentors, who I've not mentioned yet, but Louise Stoops, she was partner in litigation.
Yes, I know Louise. Yes.
Yeah. So she's been a mentor, friend, colleague for many years, and I would have conversations with her about substantive work that we're working on, and then on the side it was, by the way, we got to be thinking about where you're going to be going and what's happening next, and meaning back in the U.S. And so, we're having these discussions. I said, I think I want to stay in Japan. I really, how do I make that happen? And I was hoping it would happen for MoFo, but it just wasn't. It just, unfortunately, was not a match. It was no longer a match. And actually, she's the first who said to me, well, have you considered going in-house in Japan? There are few and far between opportunities that come up, but if you really want this is what you should be thinking about. And I, of course, appreciated her wisdom and insight, but I think I was stubborn. And so I didn't really try to look for in-house positions. But then these conversations started, I guess, September 2019 is when I came back from maternity leave.
Yes.
With my twins. And then, we're again approaching that. I was then at the 4-year mark. And so, MoFo wanting to plan ahead, it was kind to have those conversations, and Louise having those conversations with me. And it was, I don't recall when, sometime during the pandemic at some point, Louise and I have had these ongoing discussions about where am I going? What's happening next? And she mentioned that she had heard that my predecessor in this role at Autoliv was going to be leaving to be the GC of another company. And she said, and we had been doing work for Autoliv. And she said, are you interested in maybe this position? And I said, absolutely, because I knew the company. I knew the GC. I'd met him on a couple of occasions. My predecessor in this role was fantastic. I thought, that would be great. That would be great. And so that's what started the discussions for me to get this role. And it's really just a really fortunate timing, coincidence, luck, whatever, however you want to call it, that this opportunity arose exactly when I needed it. And I, grabbed it with both hands and said, I'm all in.
Wow, good on you. I didn't realize that was all operating in the background there. It's almost like that tax was your overriding operating system whirring away in the background. I've got to get out of here before 5 years so I don't get caught by this tax stuff. And then all this at the same time with your husband and your family knowing how they were enjoying it here, you wanted to stay. And wow, Louise, the people within the firm helping you out there as well, again, shall we say, with same as Dan. And then also the fact that you had been working with the company that you're with now as a client on the client side. So you knew people and you knew what they would be like to work with as well. So you kind of almost were interviewing them all the way through as you were working with them. But how fortunate. And I think that's also that happenstance that you talked about before, that this sort of interesting and unexpected thing came up, but almost a natural flow from what you were doing to go into work for a client.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so grateful that things lined up as they did, and that, I mean, Louise easily could have not mentioned it to me, and I never would have known. I mean, as far as I know, I mean, I never saw sort of a public listing for this position, and it was very much okay, let's start the discussion. Then went through the formal interview process, but if I had not had someone thinking about, well, Aramide wants to stay. Maybe this is a good match and a good connection, and I'm so thrilled because it's been fantastic.
And I mean, generosity of your colleagues to write. They could just say,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, keep it to themselves and not tell, but they could see that was something, well, she could see that was something for you that would be very significant. And also, I mean, it keeps you at the company. It still means if there's work to come back, severe litigation work, which MOFA are brilliant at, you would obviously, first point of call would be asking MOFO to help. So there's also that connection, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. And it's wonderful that I am able to maintain that connection. I mean, there's an ongoing matter, and I've called up Louise, I've emailed Louise and others, and even having insights about how things are handled for certain aspects of the matter that MOFO is involved in. So my boss, who I report to, might say, "Oh, I think I'm going to ask MOFO about this." And I say, "Well, okay, actually, the person who's going to do it is this, maybe this associate. So why don't I just reach out to that associate? Why don't I just reach out to that person directly and call them up and say, this is what I need from you, and maybe short turnaround." So it's just really nice to have that that knowledge and sort of the insider view on things.
Right. That's amazing. And I mean, let's call out this massive fact that you actually changed roles from private practice to in-house counsel during a global pandemic. And I don't know how you did the onboarding. And perhaps that's another big topic in itself. And I think we might talk about that later on in the year with Women in Law Japan. But online onboarding, how was that? I mean, you've been there 6 months now, but are you still working remotely, and are you still trying to connect not only in Japan, but with your Asia team while you're online? How's that going?
Yeah, it's going. It's going. I think it's gone well. It's, as well as can be expected under the circumstances. I went to Autoliv the first day of my employment with Autoliv, and have not been back since, and that was in November.
Right.
So everything 100% remote at the moment. And so that means that just having to be very intentional about who I speak to, and who am I connecting with, and taking some initiative. So my boss, who I report to, she's phenomenal, and is also very mindful of this. And said, okay, well, here are the groups of people, here are the different functions who you should be speaking to. Giving me a little bit of background of what they do, and why it's it would be a good opportunity for me to speak with them. And then I'll set up maybe 15. Well, actually, they usually end up being about 30-minute chats with people, just sort of a get to know you. And I have my sort of standard, how have you worked with the legal team in the past? What's going on now? How might we work together in the future? Those sort of help me understand how I can help you, but also just the get to know you. So tell me about how long have you been at Autoliv, and what's your background, and things like that. And I think that those are important, and just help me to get a sense of course, the people that I'm going to be working with, but also gave me more of a sense of the culture of Autoliv. And I think that's just really important, and something that would be really easy for me to sort of kind of feel disconnected as I sit in my home office away from everyone else. But I'm fortunate that we are able to still find connections and find ways to get to know my colleagues during these times.
Yeah, I just so endorse exactly what you've said. I happened to do it when I was on the job in the actual company office and able to meet managers, et cetera, and make the time with them. But I totally endorse what you've said and underline it and highlight in yellow, because when I joined Inhouse as well, I made a point of exactly what you've done, meeting the managers and the managers underneath, and getting to know them, their pain points, and letting them know that, for me, I could speak speak Japanese and also be approachable, so that they knew you were a person who also happened to be the lawyer in the firm who could help them, right, in the company. So I think you've kind of replaced that water cooler moment by doing it remotely and making that time to do those appointments with people and have 30-minute chats. I think that's going to be something that sets you up for total success in the company as people get to know you. And they'll be talking about you as well and saying, yeah, she's great, she's joined, and she's really easy to talk with. You should have a chat. And so everyone would have got to know about you, I'm sure, before you even managed to make the next phone call with somebody else. But kudos to you for doing that. I think that's a magical tip.
Yeah, thank you. And one thing that I've come to realize is that, it's a huge global company, and then there are, as you mentioned, many regions that I cover. So even if I'm intentional about, certain people that I speak to, I still might get an email from someone in some group in some, place. I don't know them, and I'll ask my boss, "Do you know this person?" No, I said nope, but they've asked me to review this contract, so okay. But then using that as the opportunity to start a conversation. Oh, you sent me this contract. Okay, before I do that, I'm new to Autoliv, and why don't we have a little bit of a chat, and I can learn more about you and how I can help you. And so even using the sort of one-off requests that I get as an opportunity to have a discussion, because I just think, yeah, as you said, reminding people that we're people and we're again here to help. And so those discussions, I think, all help facilitate that.
Right. But being an in-house counsel is quite different to being a senior associate in a firm, isn't it? How are you finding that?
It is like night and day. It is so different. It's, but in good ways, or at least ways that I enjoy. I think one little detour we hadn't discussed on my career journey was that I did about a year-long secondment at Alcon Laboratories in Fort Worth, Texas.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that if we had a chance, because I was probably a customer of yours at that time, because I used Alcon contact lens fluid to clean my contact lenses. Yes.
Okay. Very good. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. So I too used to be. I have LASIK now, so I don't use any Alcon or other contact lens products. But yeah. So that was again, an opportunity came up. Said, oh, we've got this great thing. We're looking for a mid-level to senior associate. I think I was maybe 7th or 8th year at the time, and was asked to do this. But it was sort of a here's this company, really important relationship. We really think that you're well suited for it. And by the way, it's in Texas, which, was not quite the ideal of San Diego that I was aspiring to stick to. But it was a fantastic experience, and really gave me that insight into what in-house looks like. I was particularly there for advertising and sort of regulatory review of, marketing materials. And so, they're everything from, as you mentioned, the contact lens solutions to some of the surgical medical devices, which, very highly regulated, by the FDA in the US. And so I got a sense of, okay, in title, I'm here for this thing. But as soon as you start to tell people, okay, I'm a lawyer, I work in the legal department at Alcon, sometimes people would come to me and say, I think this should be looked at by a lawyer. Can you help with this? And I'm like, this has nothing to do with advertising, but I don't want to say no. I'm glad they thought to include a lawyer, to involve a lawyer in this. And so, the wearing of many hats, and and then just having, me being someone sort of new to, it was a fairly, I guess, a decent sized legal department. So maybe, 30 some people, and, all in different roles. As soon as you see someone who's new, and I was excited and I just want to learn everything. Suddenly I'm helping like the product liability person, because that's a lot of the litigation that I had done. And, then the privacy person who I just happened to chat with over lunch, and she's like, oh, I'm working on these privacy matters. And so I really got a sense of that, just everything under the sun that can come in because you're in the legal department. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that is, vastly different from my practice at MoFo. It's just, there's so much. I can go from, a day of reviewing, master purchase agreement, supply agreement, to advising on like engineering services, privacy related matters, reviewing compliance reports. I mean, there's just so much that all can happen within one day. But I love it. I love the variety. I love that I'm constantly learning. I think it's not just because I'm new here. It's not just because I'm new to the company, but because it's a huge company. There's so much going on that I'm always going to get to have that, sort of exciting something new. And, okay, well,
Right.
a new area, a new product,
Exactly.
and new something else. So.
Yeah, and because it's a business, right? It's a business that's alive and it's constantly changing. And so all sorts of things are coming up all the time. And when you're in a law firm, I think the work comes to you and you do it and you deliver. But when you're in a company, as you just said, you're wearing many hats. And I remember too, when I did the same sort of thing, I was writing or reviewing or drafting the speeches that the CEO would make externally at a business function. And I'd think, this is not legal work. But in fact, it was also, obviously knowing what he wanted to say and making sure that he was saying things well, but also you got an insight to the things that the boss was doing outside of the company. So everything always relates back to your role as an in-house counsel, but you've put your finger on it there, that not everything is a legal or a law job. It's much broader than that, and you wear many hats. So I love that you've pulled that out. That's a really big difference between being an in-house a lawyer and working in a law firm. Yeah. All right. I've got so much more to ask you. I'm going to ask a couple of things about outside activities because I know you're very busy and I know that you're also really involved in women of color in law. And I wanted you to tell me a little bit more about that organization because I recently heard you speak on a panel for women of color in law and you were fantastic, especially when you started talking about imposter syndrome. And that's also another topic in itself. But I loved at that time when you said that you never really thought that you had imposter syndrome. Someone sort of talked to you about that. I think it was a workshop at MoFo, and you were telling the story about the first time you'd heard imposter syndrome was when someone mentioned it to you, and you said, "I don't have that. I don't have that." I loved how you said that. So tell me about that organization briefly, and how it helps you and what you are doing with that organization.
Yeah, so Women of Color in Law is a local San Diego organization started by a woman who I guess consider a mentor, Judge Valerie Johnson, who has been in the San Diego area for quite some time and really just felt like there needed to be a group that pulls together women of color in the law to, just let's support each other. Let's have panel discussions where we're talking about issues of relevance, like how do you deal with things in the workplace? It was just a way to build community and networking. And it's actually not an organization that I've been involved in so much since being in Japan, because not local in the area. But Judge Johnson and I have stayed in touch. And she said, we're thinking about doing this panel about navigating the workplace as a woman of color. And I think, you might have some interesting insights to share. And so I was so flattered that she asked. And I basically told her, I adore her so much. She could ask me to talk about anything. And I'd say, of course, yes. Yeah. What do you want? Unicorns, puppies, everything. Yeah, I'm all in. So I was really, really happy to speak on that. And I think, there's a direct kind of connection between my work on that and also Women in Law Japan, because I just found that when I am, when I come away from events where there are, women speaking, women of color, and, being in the room with others where maybe on a daily basis, you're not seeing other people, other women or other women of color. It's just, for me, it gives me energy. It fulfills me and helps me sort of remember, no, I'm not alone. No, I'm not the only one doing this. And then also learn practical tools to sort of be better and to grow and to learn. And so, the organizations like Women of Color in Law and Women in Law Japan are really, I think, vital to my happiness as a lawyer and as a person.
Yeah, vital to your happiness. That's how I feel about Women in Law Japan as well, and the other organizations I'm involved in. Many people might think, I haven't got the time for that, or, I've got to do my job and my family, that's enough. So what's your advice then for people who might be considering or thinking about volunteering or have been asked to do that, but think they have no time? What would you say to that?
I think it's sometimes it just comes down to priorities and, what sometimes, yes, you don't necessarily have time for everything, but if there's something that's important, you kind of just make the time, find the time. And I know that's easier said than done, but I did, I managed to do it while I was at MoFo and continuing to do it now as in-house, which at Autoliv, which is, a little bit easier to do with a more manageable schedule. But, finding ways that you can contribute. Are you contributing time physically in person? Are you writing? Or there are so many ways to kind of give back and also figure out what matters to you and how do you spend the time. So just giving some thought to that and then doing it. I guess that's my best advice on that.
That's wonderful. Also thinking too about this last year with the pandemic and everything that's gone on. I'm wondering what your goals or motivations might be for this coming year. Does it still involve more of that volunteer activity? Is it the same organizations going deeper there? What else have you got as your goals for this forthcoming year?
I've realized that not having the MoFo pro bono access means that I don't have that natural, just kind of easy way to give back. So I'm thinking about that more and more now, and I really haven't, I guess, found the answer. One thing I've thought about is, are there sort of nonprofit boards or other ways that I can serve? Maybe it's not sort of, in the past for pro bono, I've done more of like the direct legal services. I'm your lawyer and I'm going to stand up for you. But now thinking more, especially since I've moved into this business legal advisory role that you take on more in-house, I think I could see that working its way into like a board of a like nonprofit or something along those lines. But I haven't really quite put the exactly figured out what it is, but I think something along those lines. And then just personally, I guess professionally, just really trying to find my footing, keep developing and growing at Autoliv and, understanding more of the business, honing my skills. I think one of the things that's just so exciting about the role for me is that how much I get to learn about the business and just wanting to just do more of that and make sure that I'm, my skills are up to snuff and that I can be the best lawyer that I can be for those who need me in the company.
Sounds like you are a bit like your mum and dad. A bit of the DNA has rubbed off, I should say, with the lifelong learning that you've been talking about. It sounds like you've also got that inside of you. So to Aramide, what does success mean to you? There's one.
That's a good question. That's a very good question. It's such an individual. It's such an individual question. For me, I think it's about being clear about what it is that you want from your life, from your work, and then getting that, like finding that for yourself, achieving that for yourself. I think that's it's sort of a vague definition, but I think the point is maybe there's no one clear definition of what success is, because for every person it has to be different. I mean, there are too many different inputs, too many different values, too many different ways to look at the same situation. I mean, I talk about this with my husband. I mean, we are doing things that some people look at and like, that's crazy. Why would they raise kids in Japan? They don't even speak the language.
Why not?
Right. Why not? Why not? For us, it's working. It is working. And it doesn't mean everything's perfect and wonderful all the time, because having twins is no joke. But it's just, knowing what you want for yourself and then being able to kind of create your life and your career in a way that aligns with what you want and what's important to you.
Right.
That's success to me.
Do you have a kind of theme for the year or a word for the year that guides you? Do you choose something like that each year?
I listened to your first podcast with Angela, and that actually helped me solidify what my words were. I was kind of struggling. Because I love the idea of a word, but what I found every year prior to this one, I think I'd had a word, and by the end of January, I'd forgotten what the word was, wasn't sticking to it. I have 2 words this year.
Good, tell me.
And my 2 words are curiosity and action. Curiosity and action. And the reason those are my words are because I sometimes, like when you sort of get in your own way, like, I mean, if you talk yourself, oh gosh, I don't know how to do this. I don't know this thing. I don't know this thing. I don't understand. I realize that the way that I get myself out of that is by being curious about the situation. Ooh. So for example, if I get an email or a text we use Teams at Autoliv. I get a Teams from someone and they says, can I talk to you? As when I was at MoFo, if I got something like that, it was almost, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. What do they want? I'm about to get fired. And they're like, just like having that like cycle in my head, I realized that the way for me to get out of that is to be curious. what is this thing that they're going to ask me about? What is the situation? What am I going to learn from this? What's the new thing here? And then because I'm, wanting to learn so much, sometimes I spend too long in that process. So the action is to make sure that once I've curiosity, my curiosity, I've let that prevail. I've asked my questions. I've got the understanding, then act on it. And that actually comes, I interviewed for a position at Amazon, did not get it. But one of the values of Amazon that I really liked was bias for action. And I thought, I'm not sure how often I have that, but it's definitely something that I want to have. So curiosity and action are my two words together.
Fantastic. Bias for action. I hadn't heard that. I know they always have day one, but I guess that's also action, isn't it? Every day is a new day to be acting. And I love that. What am I going to learn from this? So the person is asking you the question, so they want to learn from you. But here you are being curious and turning it around and saying, what am I going to learn from this conversation? I think that is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. And a little bit of, it's what allows me to ask the questions that I need to be able to answer the question for somebody else. So it's curiosity of not only what can I learn, but what information do I need to then be able to solve this problem? So for example, this happens quite a few times. I've noticed I get can you review this contract? And, it seems pretty straightforward, but until I start asking the questions, I don't have the context. Contracts don't just sort of live in a vacuum or just like this standalone thing. They are a representation of a business and agreements and arrangements. And so I have to understand that context. Why is this new business? Is this ongoing business? What's the product? What's the value? There are so many questions that I need to ask to then have that inform how I review the contract. So it's curiosity also for the sake of, getting to the right answer.
Yeah. Wow. So what would your advice be then for young lawyers and law students coming up the ranks? Is it be curious? Is it take action? Is it something else?
What I think would have been helpful for me is to truly not be afraid to ask questions. I think I've had the curiosity. I had the curiosity as a younger lawyer, but I wasn't always confident that I could or should ask the question. And so if I, got a request for a type of work that I've not done before, okay, I want you to do a deposition outline. I might ask the standard question. Okay, do you have a standard form that you like, or a template, or one to work from? But I might not ask all of the questions that would help me deliver the best work product. So I think I had a fear that if I ask questions, they're going to know I'm not smart and I don't know this and then all these things, which some people might say is imposter syndrome, but I don't. Just being confident enough to ask the question, because sometimes it's in that asking that people show, you can show other, it's not just asking a question doesn't mean you're not smart and you don't know anything. Sometimes it shows you're taking the initiative, you're invested, you're interested. And so I think it's just so important to ask questions.
You said it. I love it. Is there anything else that we've not covered today, Aramide, that you'd like to talk about? Something that you thought about as we were talking and didn't get a chance to say?
I think something that's also big. If I were to look back at my career, I was given this advice, and I think I've done it, but I wish I had more confidence, I guess, as I was doing it. Was when someone asks you to do something, see it as an opportunity. See it as an opportunity and say yes. It might be scary, it might be hard, but you won't grow if you say no because you're scared you're going to mess it up, or you're not going to get it right, then you're also going to miss out on having the opportunity to do it and to learn and to be better. So sometimes just know that you say yes, and you'll figure it out, and you'll figure out a way to get it done. Hopefully with the support of those around you. But I think that's just a really important thing that I want to pass on to junior lawyers, women of color. Say yes, have some confidence in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, then maybe others won't believe in you either.
Wonderful. Say yes and then work it out later. I do like that a lot. I think I actually do that myself. So I agree with you. All right. I don't want to wind up today, but I have to wind up today, our conversation, and I'm just going to finish as I usually do with all of my guests, and that is the final Super Six, a quick fire round of 6 questions to wind up our interview. And the first question is, if I gave you 1 million yen in cash, where in Japan would you spend it? Your favorite store or destination or both even?
I think for me it would be a destination. I would, let's presume that there's no pandemic. I would want to take my family to the Club Med in Okinawa because, yes, beautiful beach. I've never been there before, but from the pictures, it looks beautiful. And to have childcare sort of on demand, that would be really nice too.
Perfect. Is there a podcast or a book that you are listening to, have read, or that you have listened to or read recently that you recommend?
I'm all about podcasts at the moment. Yours, of course, not just because I'm a guest on one, but because your first 2 episodes were fantastic and full of inspiring words and gems.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And also the Counsel podcast by Mel Scott. That's one that I've just learned a lot about the role of in-house attorneys, and it's phenomenal. And then anything, book, podcast by Brene Brown. I absolutely love all that she has to say, vulnerability, authenticity, courage, leadership. I just think it's all amazing.
So brilliant. They are both on my podcast list. Mel Scott, I just love her way of doing her podcast, and also Brene. We can have a conversation about that separately too. Okay, so you're stuck on a desert island and you need to bring one person. Sorry, you've got lots there, but one person, one item, and one food. Who and what are they?
So I would probably bring my mom because I've not seen her quite some time. She's been to Japan several times, including I think it was like November or so before the pandemic. So that's good, but it's been a while. So my mom, the item would be radio or music playing device because just love music to being able to get back to maybe the karaoke, the music enjoyment, dancing, singing. And what's the last item?
Some food.
Oh, food. Did I mention I like chocolate cake?
Yeah.
So, let's go back to that because that's always a safe bet.
Good. Sounds excellent. And I'm going to ask you a different question to what I normally ask people, which is, have you met anyone famous, or is there some celebrity or famous person that you would love to meet?
Someone famous I've met?
Or someone famous you'd love to meet,
or I'd love to
in your lifetime.
I would love to meet Michelle Obama. I think she's amazing.
I knew you were going to say Michelle Obama. I knew.
Did you?
I knew.
I was like, I don't want to be. I don't know if it's too predictable or whatever. But whatever it is, I listened to her audiobook, Becoming. I think that she's amazing, and that's probably the one.
I thoroughly agree with you. I've read her book too, and I would love to meet her as well. Maybe we can try and do that together sometime.
Yes, a Women in Law Japan event featuring Michelle Obama. I mean, can you imagine? Would that be great?
That would be fabulous. Your bedside cabinet. I imagine you've got some books there, but what else do you have on your bedside cabinet?
Right now, it's a little bit staged, I guess, but I had to move things from my home, my workstation for the podcast. But I've got a book called Networked, which is a story of how I think it's 20 women lawyers who came together during the pandemic and sort of found each other on LinkedIn, created this community, and it's just a really, really amazing story of just each of them and how they sort of managed, survived the pandemic. And I'm just learning a lot of just really interesting information. And some of these ladies, I just think they're so amazing. I've reached out to them on LinkedIn and they've been kind enough to say, oh yes, what insights can I share with you? And it's been just a really fun book. And then the other is I've got, I think, a Stanford Law Journal, which is maybe lighter reading for a different time.
Yeah, Stanford Law Journal.
Or Stanford Lawyer Magazine. Actually, how about on the editing? We cut out that one. We'll just stick with the first. Network.
That would certainly make me go to sleep. But anyway, I'm sure a magazine is different to a journal. So perhaps the magazine's got lots of lovely, interesting things there. I do love that name, The Networked. I've heard about that book, but you've reminded me about that, so I will go and get that one. Thank you so much. Well, we've come to the end, and I'd really like to thank you, Aramide, for sharing so much with us, your stories, your tips, your nuggets of advice. It was really amazing to connect with you today in this way, and I thank you so very, very much. How can people connect with you after this?
So I'm on LinkedIn and definitely welcome people to send me messages, to connect with me. I'm in the spirit of those women of network who have found amazing connections there. I was shocked to learn that LinkedIn is no longer just a place to like put your resume. There are actually interesting discussions happening, and so find me on LinkedIn, and that's really kind of the only social media that I'm active in.
That's good. So that's really fantastic. You're on LinkedIn, and I know you're an active person on LinkedIn as well, and you're always commenting. So I really do recommend people do connect with you, and we'll put all of that in the show notes. So anyone who's interested in connecting can just reach out to you. No problem at all. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And then I totally encourage it. And you might recall the panel that I was on.
Yes.
I said, if people offer to connect with you and to help you, to be a sounding board or, et cetera, reach out. And I don't think anyone took me up on it. So maybe well, actually, that's not true. There, not too many people, I should say, took me up on that. But yeah, I'm definitely happy to chat. I love talking about women, empowering women and the law. And so if there's anyone who wants to connect with that way, please do.
Great. Do let me know how many people reach out to you after they've listened to you speaking here today.
I will. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I'd love to finish up here. Well, actually, I don't want to love to finish up here. I want to keep talking, but I have to finish up here with you. And I've had a fantastic conversation about so many different things. I'm so grateful for you to come on the show and be my guest. And hopefully this will go well and we get 10 fantastic women lawyers out there for season 1. And I just want to thank you again for your honesty and your, especially being someone in this legal profession who is as compassionate and caring a lawyer as you are. I really thank you for sharing your journey and all of that wisdom inside of you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's really been an honor and just a privilege just to chat with you today. And also just want to share how amazing it's been to witness your path and journey in the Japan legal community. I mean, it's really quite amazing what you've done. And starting this podcast being among those amazing things, I love looking forward to it. And I can't wait to see who your other guests are this season.
Thank you so much. And for all of my listeners, please do listen to this episode again and again, like it, subscribe to Lawyer on Air. And also, if you don't mind, add a review. That really helps others know that listening to this podcast is worth their time investment. Do go ahead and share this episode with someone who you think would enjoy listening to it and wants to lead an inspired life as a wonderful lawyer lady. That's all for now. I'll see you on the next episode. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now. Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of Lawyer on Air. I really hope that you were inspired by the story you heard and that you discovered something new about women in the law. It's my passion to share my stories of amazing legal ladies, so please subscribe to the show so that you don't miss future episodes. And if you can think of even just one person to share this episode with, that would make my day. I would love to connect with you, so jump on over to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter or Insta, where you can find me. The links are in the show notes below. Well, that's all from me today, and I look forward to seeing you right here on the next episode of Lawyer on Air. Cheers, kampai, and bye for now.